All right, so Nina Turner recently made an appearance on CNN where she did what she does best and effectively and simply outlined exactly what the current problems with the Joe Biden administration are, as we're seeing recent reports of even normie Democrats jumping ship and absolutely atrocious numbers coming from some of the main constituencies that make up the Democratic Party base, like black voters, Latino voters, and young voters. So let's go ahead and jump into this clip where she outlines exactly how Joe Biden can avoid a potential 2024 primary challenge.
Nina, Senator, you're a Democrat who has been critical of Joe Biden over the years. This news reported by Isaac this morning is that Democrats are not, at this point, going to primary Joe Biden, and they're warning others to not do the same. In other words, stay out of this. Do you think that's the right path?
Well, this is John and Brianna. This is about life and death. So if the Democrats, my party, wants to push back the neo-fascist tidal wave that is happening from the courts to the streets, then it is going to have to deliver and change material conditions for the people. Yes, people should come out to vote as if their lives depend on it in November, this November, next November, and every November after that. But what my party must do, since it controls all the levers of power in both chambers of the United States Congress and the presidency, is they need to contort themselves through public policy as if their lives depend on it. People need relief in this country, and one way to back off any primary challenge, should there be one, is to deliver for the people. It is to give them something they can feel. It is to cancel student debt. It is to go ham on this extremist Supreme Court. It is to embody the spirit and tradition of President FDR. And one of my fears, John and Brianna, in this particular moment, since people are so desperate and the pain is so deep, is that this Congress and this president are not bold enough for the moment. So we should not be basing the whole measure on what is best for the Democratic Party. We should measure based on what is best for Big Mama and Big Daddy in hoods where people are misunderstood, whether it's the rural hood, the urban hood, or the suburban hood. That is how you settle whether or not there will be a primary. Deliver for the people.
Okay, so, I mean, again, Nina Turner absolutely nailing it. I mean, it shouldn't be that complicated of a concept to, I mean, especially for journalists and, commentators like this guy over here, authors and writers who work in this field of politics. Really doesn't seem like it should be that complicated of a concept to understand that materially delivering in ways that improve average people's lives is going to have potential political benefits to that. I mean, it's a radical concept there, but again, it's a concept that the Biden administration, the entirety of corporate media and the establishment class haven't seemed to catch up on. So, credit to Nina Turner for going on CNN and laying this out for them in explicit terms. But I think what she said there at the end, that he needs to embody the spirit, the tradition of FDR and the way that he operated the presidency, is basically the main point that she was trying to make. Because, I've talked about this before, but basically the Biden administration approach to all of these different crises that we have seen, whether it's COVID, whether it's the economic situation, whether it's on abortion rights, whatever it may be, the response from the Biden administration has basically been treating the presidency as some sort of a bystander, as some sort of a position where you cheer from the sidelines and just simply hope that good things happen, or simply hope that the corruption within your own party and the Republican Party is overcome in order to pass things that will materially benefit average working class people. And it's a completely delusional strategy, and I think that that's been exemplified by fights like Build Back Better, which was shredded into a million pieces by a handful of corporate Democrats within Biden's own party with little to no public pushback whatsoever during that entire process. And contrast that to how FDR or Lyndon B. Johnson operated the presidencies, where they were basically just breaking out the whipping stick and pushing people within their coalition, forcing them, threatening them in some cases to fall in line with the party's agenda in order to accomplish these goals. And if you do that, if you do things that the establishment deems to be radical, which are really just things that are policies that are supported by the vast majority of the American people, if you actually do that, then not only will it have benefits for those people, but it will also have political benefits. I mean, it's like this downward circular spiral where Democrats don't accomplish even their half-assed agenda that they are pushing forward, and then they come to the conclusion that, oh, we must have done too much. We must have, gone too far with the radical socialist agenda, and that's why people are turning on you. I mean, it's like, no, that's not why people are turning on you. People are turning on you because you're not successfully following through on not only the policies that the American people overwhelmingly want, want things like the Green New Deal, things like Medicare for all, things like lowering prescription drug costs, but even the half-assed compromises that were made with corporate Democrats and Republicans in many instances. So again, it shouldn't be that complicated of a concept to understand, but nonetheless, we've had even some nominally progressive lawmakers like Ro Khanna who have been pushing the exact antithesis to everything that Nina Turner was just saying. So contrast her messaging there with something like this from Ro Khanna saying, Democrats need to be disciplined. You don't get anywhere attacking Biden. So, I mean, I'll put this down in the description if you want to go read the entirety of it, but I mean, just a full-throated, knee-jerk reactionary defense of the Biden administration, pushing back against any left-wing criticism of the Biden administration. And I mean, this is the same guy, Ro Khanna, who I agree with on many different policy priorities, but in terms of strategy, I mean, this guy is fucking off the wagon in terms of, pushing for these types of ideas. And it wasn't just, treating the Biden administration with, soft hands, but it was also a couple months ago when Build Back Better was confirmed to be eviscerated. Ro Khanna came out and wrote an entire op-ed about how the problem with those negotiations, it wasn't Kyrsten Sinema or Joe Manchin putting on obvious displays of corruption and bad faith negotiations. No, that wasn't the problem. The problem was that the left and progressives were too mean to them, that they weren't conceding to their demands earlier in the negotiation process. I mean, just completely horrific takes here coming from Ro Khanna. Honestly, a genuine disappointment on this front. But in terms of what the actual polling data that was causing this conversation on CNN to happen in the first place, here from Caitlin Collins, and this is just absolutely like pathetic Trumpian levels of denial here from the Biden administration. But they say asked about the New York Times polling showing 64% of Democrats preferring a different candidate in 2024. Biden tells, not even going to pronounce that name, Bet Gittleson, I guess, tells his party that they want him to run. And he said, quote, read the polls, Jack. You guys are all the same. That poll showed that 92% of Democrats, if I ran, would vote for me. So this is his response to this. I mean, completely defensive, completely delusional, but also just lying straight up about what the actual data within this polling was showing. So first of all, the number up here, 64% of Democrats prefer a different candidate in 2024. So that was the question. They were asked, would you want somebody else, a different candidate, to replace Joe Biden on the 2024 ticket? A majority of Democrats responded to that. And in the way that Biden responded to that polling data, saying 92% of Democrats would vote for me, I mean, it's almost like a complete contradiction to what this data up here is showing. And the reason for that is because Biden completely misrepresented this data, because this data wasn't on 92% of Democrats wanting him to run in 2024. It was 92% of Democrats that said, if we were forced to in a hypothetical matchup and you didn't let us replace you with a different candidate, which we want to do, and it was Joe Biden versus Donald Trump, then I guess 92% of us would suck it up and hold our noses and vote for Joe Biden in that very specific context. So again, just in complete and utter denial about what all of the polling data is saying. I mean, it's not just, 64% of Democrats not wanting him to run. It's over 70% of the American people not wanting him to run. And it's over 90% of young voters who don't want Joe Biden to run in 2024. So, I mean, all of his major coalitions are jumping ship. He has historic record lows in terms of his approval rating at this point in his presidency. And still seems like there's absolutely no self-reflection from within the Biden administration. And to the extent that there is some degree of self-reflection from Biden, it's on like that the media is being too mean to him, or that the polling data is actually secretly in support of him somehow, even though all of the evidence is to the contrary. So just completely pathetic and delusional here from the Biden administration. But we've also had recent actions which I think play a role in why the Democratic Party is turning against Biden right now. So here from Business Insider, they say outgoing White House communications director says pro-choice activists are out of step. Okay, so choosing to attack the base that got Joe Biden elected, the pro-choice activists who have been working for decades to try to get Democrats to actually fucking do something to protect abortion rights. They've had plenty of opportunities over the last number of decades since Roe v. Wade was decided by the Supreme Court in the 1970s, many opportunities to act on this, and they're choosing to, instead of admitting their own failures and trying to put forward some bigger, bolder agenda that the American people want on protecting abortion rights, they're choosing to attack their base of so-called activists being out of step. step. And just as a reminder, if you look at what these so-called pro-choice activists are promoting right now in terms of policy solutions to the right-wing assault on abortion rights in this country, they are perfectly in line. They are perfectly in step with the vast majority of the American people. It is the Biden administration that is significantly to the right of what the American people want to see on protecting abortion rights and overhauling the Supreme Court. So again, just completely misframing here from the Biden administration. We also had this story that broke earlier in July here from Slate. They say, the Biden-McConnell deal to make an anti-abortion advocate a federal judge is still on. And, just to really put it in your face here, this, before the Roe v. Wade decision actually came out, they were planning on announcing this appointment of this anti-abortion advocate judge here. They were planning on announcing it the day that the decision was leaked or came out on Roe v. Wade. So, obviously they didn't end up doing it on that day, but nonetheless, pushing for an anti-abortion judge in some sort of a backroom deal with Mitch McConnell, who I guess Biden is not aware of this after 8 years of him completely obstructing everything Obama wanted to do. But Mitch McConnell, not exactly somebody whose word you can trust, certainly not when it comes to, appointments or getting some sort of federal judge deals behind the scenes going on here. So completely pathetic, but again, something that would diminish support from your base of so-called advocates. We also had this one as a reminder from a couple months ago. Nancy Pelosi supports anti-abortion candidate Henry Cuellar down in Texas against a pro-choice progressive primary challenger, Jessica Cisneros. So this was happening as the Roe v. Wade decision was already being released. So again, you look at what the Democratic establishment is prioritizing in a moment like this. And listen, obviously there are some constraints to what Joe Biden can accomplish, but he's not even fucking trying. Let's be real about it. In terms of executive orders, he did release one last week that is going to take some tiny first steps in attempting to protect some abortions within a lot of these conservative states that are trying to ban it. I think one of the executive orders that he issued through Health and Human Services, Xavier Becerra, basically will allow doctors to make decisions in the case of abortions that are a threat to the life of a mother, will allow more freedoms for doctors within these conservative states to perform those abortions. But again, we're talking about tiny, tiny steps in a problem that is systemic and a problem that is deeply rooted in this country at a fundamental level. And he's not willing to touch any of those because he's an institutionalist. He believes that it should be more of a priority to protect the sanctity of the Supreme Court than it should be a priority to protect basic fundamental human rights in the United States. So there's tons of stuff that he could do from the executive level. He could try to have abortions on federal lands that are not under the jurisdiction of these state governments. He could try to expand dramatically access to abortion pills. He could try to on a number of other different issues not related to abortion. He could, as Nina Turner was saying, cancel student debt. He could legalize marijuana effectively by descheduling it. There's so many different things that he could do to appeal directly to the constituencies that have been jumping ship, namely young people who are significantly to the left of Joe Biden. And yet, instead of doing that, he's choosing to attack his base of support and pretend as if that's going to be some sort of a valid election strategy in the midterms or in the 2024 elections. So, again, credit to Nina Turner for doing what she does best, but not sure that this is going to be a message that the Biden administration actually takes to heart, or definitely not anticipating that they're going to be acting on any of those things that she was talking about there, because again, they care more about bringing over a handful of independent or Republican-leaning suburban wine moms than they care about actually coalescing and expanding their actual base of support within Black, Latino communities as well as young people within the United States.